The galaxy had always seen humanity as soft, emotional, and harmless. They were the youngest species to join the Galactic Council, and for hundreds of years, humans had earned a reputation for kindness. They rebuilt destroyed planets, healed alien refugees, and brought food to dying worlds. Where others sought power, humans sought peace. Their diplomats were patient, their soldiers disciplined, their scientists generous with knowledge. The Council used to joke that humanity's greatest weapon was a smile. But that was before the colonies burned. It began quietly, without warning. The Terran colony on Kera's 4 sent a distress call, short, desperate, cut off mid-sentence. By the time the message reached Earth, the colony was gone. Then the same happened on Vega Prime, then Horizon Station. Billions vanished, and the transmissions that came after were nothing but static and screams. The Council promised an investigation, but weeks turned into months, and nothing was done. Some whispered that the attackers were from the Varan Empire, an aggressive alien faction known for its cruelty. Others said the Council itself had allowed it to happen, afraid of how powerful humans were becoming. Whatever the truth was, it didn't matter. Because when the Council finally sent a report to Earth, it arrived with laughter in the background. Alien officers mocking the fragile species that had begged for help. That was the moment something inside humanity cracked. The last message from the Terran colonies came through every human channel, broadcast to every ship, every planet. A simple line spoken by a tired voice: "We tried peace." And then silence. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity stopped speaking. The Council thought it was defeat. They thought the humans would surrender, retreat into their broken solar system, and fade from memory. But they were wrong. In the void between stars, far from alien eyes, the quiet of human space became something different. The deep space scanners of nearby civilizations began picking up strange signals. Massive power spikes near Jupiter, coded transmissions from abandoned stations, entire sectors sealed off without explanation. When patrol fleets tried to enter Terran territory, they disappeared without a trace. No explosions, no wreckage, just gone. The Council demanded answers, but none came. The human representatives who once smiled at every meeting had vanished. Their seats in the chamber stood empty, covered in dust. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council felt something it had never felt before: fear of silence. Rumors spread fast. Miners in the outer systems spoke of ghost ships, huge, black vessels with no markings drifting quietly through the void. Traders swore they saw ships cloaked in shadow, moving faster than scanners could detect. One alien captain reported being hailed by an unknown frequency, only to hear a human voice whisper, "Leave our borders." He turned his ship around and never spoke of it again. The Council tried to control the panic, but even they couldn't ignore the growing tension. Worlds that had mocked humans now watched the stars nervously. Every communication blackout, every missing freighter, every unexplained pulse of energy from deep space felt like a warning. Still, the Council insisted humanity was broken, that the Terrans no longer had the strength to fight. They were wrong again. Deep under the ruins of Earth's oceans, ancient bunkers came to life. Machines built centuries ago hummed and roared as massive reactors ignited. In the darkness, old war programs reactivated, code written in times of despair, when humanity feared extinction during its earliest wars. A single command pulsed through every satellite and ship still loyal to Earth: initiate contingency dawn. Around the moons of Jupiter, hidden shipyards opened like metal flowers. Inside, thousands of unfinished warships that had been sealed away were suddenly alive again. Drone fleets assembled themselves, guided by cold artificial minds that remembered everything. The Terran Navy, thought to be scattered and lost, began to rebuild, not in rage, but in silence, with precision and purpose. No speeches, no threats, only quiet preparation. Across alien space, scientists began to notice something disturbing. The stars near human borders were dimming. Not naturally, but because something enormous was blocking the light. When telescopes focused in, they caught glimpses of metallic shadows the size of small moons, moving together in perfect formation. Some called them defense stations. Others called them nightmares. The truth was neither. They were waiting. And the waiting was the worst part. Every alien race that once laughed at human patience now whispered in fear of what would come next. The council held emergency meetings, trying to make contact, trying to reason, but every message was ignored. Humanity had turned inward, rebuilding quietly, preparing. And in that quiet, they became something else, something colder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. The day came when a council fleet dared to cross into Terran space, claiming they were there to inspect for safety. The fleet never returned. Weeks later, the wreckage of their ships was found drifting near the edge of the Orion sector. Their hulls melted from the inside, their crews turned to dust. On every blackened surface, a single phrase had been burned in perfect human letters: "Do not test our patience." From that day forward, no one entered Terran space again. The stars near Earth grew quiet, untouched, sacred. But the silence was not peace. It was the calm before something greater. Because humanity's patience was never endless. And now that it had ended, the galaxy began to understand what true fear was. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the storm humanity was about to unleash. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the kind of silence that made the universe feel smaller, colder, and more dangerous. Weeks passed since the disappearance of the Council's inspection fleet, but no one dared to send another. The Galactic Council chamber, once filled with laughter and arrogance, now sat in uneasy quiet. Even the loudest empires, the ones who had mocked humans for centuries, spoke softly now. The reports kept coming: missing ships near Terran space, trade routes collapsing, strange sensor readings that defied explanation. Yet no one had seen a human. Not a single transmission, not a single face. It was as if the entire species had vanished behind a curtain of darkness. The Council tried to convince itself that humanity was retreating, that this was just a final act of defiance before extinction. But deep down, they knew better. Something was moving out there. Something vast. On the border world of Zetheran, an alien communications array picked up a faint transmission, human origin. The station commander froze. No human signal had been heard for months. The message repeated every 13 seconds, a simple pattern of numbers. 7, 9, 2, 0. Then silence. The technicians ran scans, thinking it was just a ghost frequency. But suddenly, the ground beneath the station shook. Their radar screens flared white. Something massive appeared in orbit. No warning, no entry signature. A shape blocked out the stars above, smooth, black, and silent. It didn't fire. It didn't move. It simply hovered above the planet, casting a shadow large enough to cover cities. Panic spread across Zetheran. The commander tried hailing it, screaming into the comms, "Identify yourself. This is restricted space." But no answer came. Then, in the silence, a low voice echoed across every channel, calm and cold. "This sector is under Terran protection. Leave." The commander froze. The voice was human, but it wasn't like any voice he had ever heard. It was too steady, too precise, like a machine speaking through flesh. Moments later, the massive ship turned and vanished into the dark without light, without sound, without trace. The next day, Zetheran's leaders abandoned their stations and evacuated the border, declaring the sector cursed. The council called an emergency meeting again. This time, the tone was different. The speaker's hands shook as he read the reports. "We have confirmation of new Terran vessels operating beyond Mars' perimeter. They are unlike anything in our records. No engine signature, no energy emissions. Their hulls absorb scans. Our satellites can't even photograph them clearly." One of the ambassadors slammed a fist on the table. "We should destroy them before it's too late. They are rebuilding." But another voice, older and wiser, spoke from the shadows. "Destroy them? You tried that before. You burned their colonies, and you laughed when their children screamed. Tell me, Ambassador, how did that work out for you?" The chamber went silent. No one met his gaze. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's greatest powers were afraid of a species they once pitied. While the council argued, far beyond their reach, the truth unfolded in the cold darkness of space. Humanity hadn't been idle. In the hidden shipyards orbiting Jupiter and Titan, ancient machines worked tirelessly, assembling fleets that hadn't existed since the first expansion war. Thousands of unmanned drones ferried parts and weapons from forgotten warehouses. Massive engines ignited beneath the ice of Europa, melting the surface from below to reveal launch bays that had been buried for generations. Humans were no longer building fleets for defense. They were constructing something far greater, an armada built for deterrence, precision, and absolute control. Inside the command bridge of the TNS Retribution, Admiral Saren Vale stood in silence. The view beyond the glass stretched forever, an ocean of stars glowing faintly against the void. "Status report," she said quietly. Her officers, a dozen men and women wearing dark gray uniforms, moved efficiently around her. "Fleet 12 is at full capacity. All AI cores synced to Central Command," one officer replied. "Slipstream relays online. Awaiting final authorization from Earth." Vale nodded. "And the colonies?" Another officer looked uneasy. "The colonies remain uninhabited. Reconstruction suspended. Orders are clear. All efforts focus on deterrence readiness." Vale closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the last message from the colonies. "We tried peace." That phrase had haunted every soldier, every leader, every child since. It wasn't just a statement. It had become doctrine. Far below in the engineering decks, rows of massive machines hummed to life, self-learning defense systems, rail cannons the size of skyscrapers, and stealth drives capable of bending light itself. The humans had learned from every alien species that ever fought them, taking their technology, improving it, perfecting it. Where the Council built fleets with pride, humans built fleets with purpose. Every bolt, every circuit, every engine was part of a single goal: to make sure no one could ever harm them again. And yet, they didn't attack. Not yet. For months, their ships stayed still, waiting near the edge of known space like predators in tall grass. They let the galaxy wonder. They let fear grow on its own. And it worked. Merchant convoys rerouted entire trade networks to avoid Terran borders. Smugglers abandoned human routes. Even pirates stopped operating near Earth systems. The silence became heavier, like pressure building in a storm. The Council sent spies, none returned. They sent peace offers, no reply. The aliens began to argue among themselves, turning suspicion inward. Empires that once ruled for centuries now whispered about Terran infiltration, about human sleeper agents and ghost fleets. Every strange flicker of light in the sky was now a human warship. Every signal glitch, every missing crew became their doing. Humanity didn't need to lift a weapon to control the galaxy. Their silence had done it for them. But deep inside the Terran command centers, there was still conflict. Not all humans agreed on what was coming. Some wanted peace again, to rebuild and reconnect. Others believed peace was a lie, something the galaxy had used to weaken them. In the Great Chamber under the ruins of Geneva, Earth's remaining leaders met in secret. Old generals, scientists, and survivors sat around a circular table. "They think we're broken," said Admiral Vale, standing at the center. "They think we've disappeared. Let them believe that a little longer." One scientist frowned. "How long before we act?" Vale looked toward the old flag of Earth hanging behind her. "Until the galaxy forgets what mercy feels like," she said quietly. "Then we remind them what justice means." Outside, above the dark curve of Earth, the rebuilt fleet drifted silently, thousands of ships glinting faintly against the starlight. From a distance, they looked peaceful, like a constellation born of iron and resolve. But every alien who stared too long at that part of the sky swore they could feel something watching them back. Humanity was waiting, and the galaxy was starting to realize the terrible truth. When humans are silent, they are not at peace. They are preparing. The whispers had spread across every corner of the galaxy now. Even the oldest empires, the ones that had once ruled through fear, had stopped laughing. They spoke of Earth in hushed tones, like an ancient curse. Entire systems near Terran space turned off their navigation beacons at night, afraid that light itself might draw attention. The Galactic Council gathered again in its grand chamber, a place of gold, marble, and arrogance that once symbolized power but now reeked of unease. The delegates from dozens of species sat in silence as the speaker entered. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Another system has gone dark," he said. "No signal, no survivors. We believe it was human." The words hung in the air like poison. For the first time, no one denied it. A lizard-like ambassador from the KRYTH Empire hissed in frustration. "You said they were rebuilding. You said they were weak." The speaker's face paled. They were. But something changed. They don't fight like before. There are no declarations, no warnings. They strike once and vanish. A delegate from the Varin Empire growled. "They are ghosts. They strike from nowhere and erase fleets in seconds. Our sensors can't even see their ships until it's too late." Another delegate whispered, "They learned from us." The room fell quiet again. They all knew it was true. Humanity had once been mocked for their unpredictability, their emotion, their creativity. But now those same traits had turned them into something unstoppable. They didn't fight for power. They fought for memory, and that made them far more dangerous than any empire ever born. Meanwhile, deep in the dark of Terran space, the truth of humanity's silence began to take shape. In the shadow of Saturn's rings floated Project Nemesis, an enormous installation hidden from the galaxy for generations. The base itself was a relic from humanity's first interstellar wars, long thought to be dismantled. But now it lived again. Inside, the corridors buzzed with quiet activity. Engineers, soldiers, and scientists moved with perfect rhythm, guided by purpose and grief. There was no laughter, no music, no speeches of victory, only the steady hum of creation. At the heart of the station stood Commander Arlen Hayes, a man who had seen too many stars die. His reflection stared back from the glass viewport before him, a tired face lined with loss, eyes that burned with purpose. "Status," he said softly. A voice replied through the comm, calm and metallic. "Nemesis core online. All reactor levels stable. AI network synchronized." Hayes nodded slowly. "And Earth Command. They approve full activation protocol. Awaiting your final authorization." Hayes stared into the void for a long moment. He remembered the day Earth's last colony fell, remembered the screams, the static, the laughter of alien soldiers echoing through the comms. That memory had never faded. "Begin the sequence," he said quietly. Far below the station, massive rings of machinery began to spin. Energy gathered like storm clouds, lighting up the darkness with flashes of white and blue. Across the solar system, hundreds of dormant satellites awakened, forming a network that stretched from Mercury to Neptune. Within minutes, the entire Terran defense grid went live. Every ship, every weapon, every hidden base synchronized under a single command. A new transmission was sent into the void, a frequency so low and cold it made nearby planets tremble. The message was simple: humanity stands. Across alien space, the effects were immediate. The Varin Empire's long-range scanners detected the energy surge first. Their admirals dismissed it at first, claiming it was a natural phenomenon, until the readings continued, steady, structured, intelligent. They sent 3 fleets to investigate the Terran border. None returned. What they didn't know was that humanity's technology had evolved far beyond anything the galaxy understood. They no longer relied on visible engines or basic propulsion. Their ships moved through folded space, invisible to the naked eye. They struck like ghosts, cutting through enemy formations with surgical precision. On the bridge of the TNS Retribution, Admiral Saren Vale stood before a glowing holographic display showing dozens of alien fleets mobilizing near Terran borders. Her officers waited for orders. "They've gathered half their navies," said one. "If they cross the line, it'll be war." Vale's eyes narrowed. "It's already war," she said calmly. "They just don't know it yet." The order was silent, transmitted through secure Terran channels that no alien could intercept. Within seconds, Human fleets positioned themselves in perfect alignment, cloaked in the dark between stars. They didn't advance. They waited. Humanity had learned that fear was a stronger weapon than fire. Back in the council chambers, the panic reached its peak. "We must strike first," shouted the Varin delegate. "We must destroy them before they destroy us." But another voice interrupted, deep and trembling. It belonged to the ambassador of the Lothari Dominion, a race older than humanity itself. "You cannot destroy them," he said. "Not anymore. They have become something we cannot fight." The chamber erupted in argument, but the old alien continued. "I fought beside humans once, long ago. I saw what they are capable of when they lose everything. They do not fight for survival. They fight to make sure no one else suffers as they did. You think they want conquest? No. They want memory. They want to be remembered as the ones who never forgot kindness, even when the galaxy spat on it." The council fell silent. The truth was hard to swallow. Every empire present had taken part in humanity's humiliation in some way, denying aid, mocking their peace efforts, exploiting their technology. And now the debt had come due. Reports came faster now, entire fleets disabled without a single shot fired. Planetary systems finding their power grids offline. Communication networks collapsing mysteriously. The council tried to send drones to investigate, but they never reached their destinations. Somewhere in the dark, human AIS had already taken control. On the colony world of Dareth Prime, a young alien worker looked up at the sky one night and saw something that froze his heart. A formation of ships, black as shadow, passed over the clouds in complete silence. The stars themselves vanished behind them. For a brief moment, the entire night turned dark. And then, as quickly as they came, they were gone. The next morning, the planet's military command center found a single signal burned into their systems. The same message that echoed across the galaxy. "We tried peace." In the Terran War Command, deep beneath the surface of Mars, the leadership gathered for the first time in decades. The lights were dim, the air thick with anticipation. "The Council will soon panic," said Admiral Vale. "They'll beg for peace again." Commander Hayes nodded. "And we'll answer. But not with words." Around the table, the faces of soldiers and scientists alike hardened. Humanity was no longer a species seeking understanding. They were a force of reckoning, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the storm had already begun. And this time, there would be no negotiations, no compromises, no laughter. The stars that once mocked humanity's patience would soon learn the truth. When humans are pushed too far, even the void itself trembles. The first flashes of war did not come with grand speeches or heroic declarations. They came quietly, unseen and unstoppable. It began on the edge of the Orion Arm, in the Velka system, where a fleet of 12 alien battleships drifted in orbit around a mining colony. They were not preparing for battle. They were laughing, celebrating, believing they had contained the Terran threat. Their commanders had no idea they were already being watched. Miles beyond the orbit of their outermost moon, something vast was moving through the darkness, slow and silent as death. It wasn't visible on any scanner, and even light itself seemed to bend around it. A faint pulse echoed in the void. One signal, one word, execute. The aliens' radar screens flickered. One officer frowned, tapping the controls. "Sensor glitch?" he asked. Another shrugged, not bothering to look up. The lights dimmed for half a second, then returned. Everything seemed normal. Then, without a sound, the lead battleship vanished. One moment it was there. The next, nothing remained but a cloud of glittering dust. The other ships screamed into comms, firing weapons wildly into the black, but their shots hit nothing. Another explosion, another ship gone. Within 30 seconds, 10 vessels had been erased, their energy signatures wiped from existence. The last captain barely managed to send a distress signal before his ship fractured in two. The transmission reached the Galactic Council as nothing more than static, but through the noise, one phrase could be heard, the voice of the dying captain whispering, "They are here." Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. Reports flooded in, fleets disappearing without a trace, planets losing power overnight, entire starports found empty. The council called it sabotage, then rebellion, but soon they ran out of words. Their fleets mobilized, but fear already ruled them. Every soldier knew the same truth. If humans were behind this, there would be no mercy. On the border world of Renath, an entire city watched the skies as a strange eclipse darkened their sun. Dozens of enormous silhouettes passed overhead, smooth, metallic, silent. The local governor ordered the planetary defense grid to fire, but the weapons never responded. The systems were dead. The command screens glitched, and a line of text appeared on every console. You took our peace. We take your pride. And then they were gone, leaving only a faint energy wave that crippled the entire planet's technology for months. No one died. Not one building was destroyed. But the message was clear. Humanity didn't want territory or slaves or gold. They wanted understanding through fear. The galaxy had made them bleed, and now the stars themselves would remember what that meant. Meanwhile, deep within the Sol system, Earth had changed. It was no longer the fragile blue world it once was. From orbit, it glowed with a faint metallic shimmer. Massive rings of satellites surrounded it like armor, pulsing with energy. Old cities, once broken by war, now thrived again, rebuilt by silent workers and machines that never slept. From the rebuilt capital of Geneva, the Terran High Command watched the galaxy burn in confusion. In a dark chamber beneath the surface, holographic projections of alien fleets flickered across the air. Admiral Sarin Vale stood at the center, her hands clasped behind her back. "They are falling apart," said one of her officers. "The Council blames itself. Half their empires have turned against each other." Vale nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "The more they fight each other, the less they'll notice what's coming." At that moment, in orbit above Jupiter, the TNS Retribution floated like a sleeping giant. Inside, rows of Terran soldiers stood in silence, their armor black and featureless, their visors glowing faint blue. They weren't cheering. They weren't speaking. They were waiting. Commander Arlen Hayes stood among them, his face lit by the light of Jupiter's storms. "Do they even know what they've done?" one of the younger soldiers asked quietly. Hayes turned to him, his voice calm but sharp. "No. And that's why they must see it." In the command bay, a dozen officers worked around a central console. One of them looked up. "Admiral, the Nemesis network reports full synchronization. Every ship is ready." Vale's voice came through the comms. "Then proceed to Phase 2. Across the solar system, thousands of Terran ships began to move. Not in chaos, but in perfect harmony. They fanned out in every direction, vanishing into the void like shadows slipping through cracks in reality. No one outside Terran space saw them leave. No one even knew they had gone. On the far side of the galaxy, in the Lot Harry home system, a massive council ship detected a faint anomaly, something moving faster than light itself. The technicians gasped as the readings spiked beyond measurable levels. "It's not possible," one whispered. "Nothing can move like that." Before they could react, every light on their ship went dark. The screens filled with static, then flickered to reveal a single image, the Earth. Behind it, hundreds of Terran warships stood in formation, their lights cold, their weapons silent. A human voice came through the speakers, calm, emotionless, the same one that had haunted so many reports. "We warned you once. You chose silence. Now you will listen." The alien commander screamed for shields, but it was too late. A pulse of light washed over the fleet, disabling every weapon, every engine. The ships didn't explode, they simply stopped existing. When the light faded, there was nothing left but drifting debris and a faint echo across the stars. Every sensor across the Lot Harry Empire recorded the same phenomenon. Whole systems went dark without warning, their planets untouched but defenseless. The message was the same across every sector: humanity remembers. Back on Earth, Vale stood in the observation room, watching the live data feed of their victories. Yet her face showed no satisfaction, only sorrow. "We gave them chances," she said softly. We gave them peace. They called it weakness. Hayes nodded beside her. Now they call it fear. She turned to him. And what will they call us when this ends? Hayes looked out the window, his reflection merging with the stars. Whatever they call us, he said, they'll never forget. In the council's golden chamber, chaos had replaced order. Ambassadors shouted at each other, blaming, accusing, begging. We must surrender, one cried. To who? Another shouted back. They don't even answer our calls. The speaker slammed his fist down. Enough. We have to unite, or we'll all fall. But his words carried no weight. The galaxy was unraveling. Empires that had stood for millennia crumbled under paranoia and fear. Fleets refused orders, commanders fled, and citizens prayed to stars that would no longer answer. And through it all, humanity stayed silent. They didn't gloat. They didn't announce victory. They simply erased threats with precision, leaving survivors to spread the terror for them. For the first time in galactic history, the Council realized that the humans they had once pitied were now the very thing that defined the universe's balance. Unseen, unstoppable, unbroken. At the edge of the Milky Way, a final transmission was detected by a listening post. The operator, shaking, played it for his commander. It was a human voice, faint but clear. We were patient. We were kind. We were ignored. Now the stars will learn our language. Then the signal cut off, and for the first time in millennia, the galaxy went dark. The galaxy had become a place of whispers and fear. Once glorious fleets now drifted in silence, and once proud empires cowered in the shadows of their own arrogance. The Galactic Council's command channels were flooded with desperate reports. Colonies vanishing overnight, warships going dark mid-transmission, entire communication networks shutting down as if the stars themselves had chosen to forget them. The name humanity was now spoken only in fear. It was no longer a species. It was a storm. On the fractured world of Kalaris, a council stronghold, alien generals gathered around a dim holographic table. The room trembled as distant explosions shook the planet. Their eyes flickered nervously. They're not attacking our worlds, one said, his voice breaking. They're unmaking them. Every system that turns its scanners toward Terran space simply ceases to exist. The elder among them hissed through sharp teeth. Then stop scanning them. But even he knew it was useless. The humans didn't need to be seen to be everywhere. A younger officer leaned forward, shaking. We've tried surrendering. We've sent beacons begging for negotiation. They don't answer. The elder turned his cold eyes toward the stars outside the window. They have gone beyond talk. This is not war, it is judgment. Thousands of light-years away, at the heart of the Terran Command nexus hidden beneath Mars, Commander Arlen Hayes stood inside a circular chamber filled with flickering blue light. Dozens of holographic displays hovered in the air around him, each showing a different sector of the galaxy. He moved calmly from one to the next, analyzing silent battle footage. The human fleets never roared into combat. They appeared like ghosts, erased the enemy, and disappeared again. There was no celebration, no music, no cheers, only purpose. Status report, Hayes said quietly. A voice responded from the central AI core, deep and resonant, almost human. 73 enemy fleets neutralized. Civilian casualties? None. 75% of galactic communications compromised. Hayes nodded slowly. And Earth? Earth remains stable. Reconstruction of oceanic defense rings is complete. He looked up at the holographic image of Earth, its surface now covered in faint silver veins of light. It wasn't the blue world of old. It was something new, something reborn. He thought of his family, gone in the colony fires. He thought of the words that had started all of this. We tried peace. They had tried, and they had been punished for it. Never again. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in the command bunker known as the Core Chamber, Admiral Saren Vale met with the last remaining leaders of the Terran Confederation. Around the table sat generals, scientists, and counselors, each of them marked by loss. The holographic display at the center showed the Council's territory shrinking day by day. They are breaking faster than expected, Vale said. Their fleets have begun retreating into their home systems. Some are even turning against each other. A scientist adjusted his glasses, his voice calm but heavy. Fear spreads faster than war. Their empires were built on control. Now they see what happens when control means nothing. Vale nodded. Then we proceed with Phase 3. The others exchanged uneasy glances. One of the younger officers spoke up, his voice hesitant. Admiral, if we continue, there won't be anything left of them. Not even their history. We'll erase them completely. Vale turned her gaze to him, her eyes cold but not cruel. You think I don't know that? She asked softly. You think I don't remember the day we begged for peace? The day they burned our children and laughed? The galaxy chose its fate. We are only showing it the reflection of its choices. For a moment, no one spoke. The room seemed to hum with the sound of distant storms. Then Hayes entered, his steps echoing on the metal floor. Phase 3 authorization confirmed, he said simply. Nemesis Core is ready. The lights in the chamber dimmed as a low pulse rippled through the planet itself. In orbit, the defense rings aligned perfectly, channeling power from the rebuilt reactors on Luna and Mars. Across the solar system, human ships changed course simultaneously, each receiving the same encrypted signal. In the darkness between stars, the Terran fleet began to move. They didn't travel through hyperspace like the others. They bent light, folded gravity, slipped through the quietest corners of the void. Entire armadas appeared above enemy planets before any sensor could detect them. But instead of raining fire, they broadcast a single message across every frequency, every screen, every heart that could hear it. You have forgotten mercy. We will remind you. Then came the light. But it wasn't destructive. Not yet. Across alien worlds, the night skies filled with human ships, enormous silhouettes glowing softly like stars reborn. People screamed, prayed, or watched in awe as the fleets hovered silently above cities. They didn't attack. They simply waited, engines humming low, casting shadows that stretched for miles. Then, as quickly as they had come, they vanished. The next day, every planetary defense system, every weapon, every war engine that had once been used to kill humans was gone. Dismantled, melted, erased from history. Humanity didn't need to destroy their enemies to win. They stripped them of their pride. Back on Mars, Vale stood before the central viewport, watching data streams pour in from across the galaxy. It's working, said Hayes. They're terrified to even look at us now. She nodded, her voice quiet. Fear will hold for a while. But fear fades. When it does, we'll have to decide what comes next. A younger officer, his voice trembling, asked, And what is next, Admiral? Vale turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Forgiveness, she said softly, if they ask for it. But far away, not all aliens wanted peace. In a distant sector known as the Varren Reach, the same empire that had first bombed the Terran colonies, a massive fleet began to gather. Thousands of warships assembled under their crimson banners, preparing for one final strike. The Varren Emperor stood before his armies, his voice booming through the halls. You think the humans are gods? They are not. They bleed, they die, and we will make them suffer as they made us fear. The fleet launched into the void, thousands of engines blazing. But what awaited them was not the weak species they remembered. As they crossed into Terran space, their senses went blind. One by one, their ships began to vanish. In the command ship, the Emperor shouted in panic. Shields! Weapons! Find them! But his voice broke when he saw the view outside the window. The stars were gone. The sky had turned black. Then, out of that blackness, shapes began to form, massive Terran warships, their hulls reflecting no light, their weapons glowing blue like the eyes of gods. The Emperor whispered in disbelief. Impossible. A voice answered him, calm and human. No. Inevitable. The screen went white. And just like that, the last fleet of the Varren Empire was erased. When the report reached the Galactic Council, there was no longer any debate, no arguments, no pride. The speaker stood before the silent assembly and said, "They pushed humanity too far. Now the stars themselves bow." And across the vast reaches of space, in every world that had ever mocked Earth, people looked up at the night sky and shuddered, for the stars no longer shone with warmth. They glowed cold, bright, and watchful, like the eyes of humanity itself. The war, or whatever it was now, had gone beyond battles and fleets. It had become something the galaxy could barely comprehend. Worlds once proud of their armies now lay quiet, their skies patrolled not by soldiers but by the silent hum of unseen Terran machines. The Council had stopped keeping count of the fallen fleets. There was no point anymore. Humanity didn't just win battles, they erased them. The records, the transmissions, the very memory of resistance disappeared as if rewritten by something beyond mortal understanding. The galaxy had not realized that while it mocked humanity's patience, humanity had been learning, evolving, and building a kind of power that could no longer be challenged. Deep within the cold orbit of Neptune, a single human vessel drifted in the void, a ship so vast that planets cast shadows smaller than its hull. The TNS Eternity. It was the heart of the Terran network, the command center of an empire that no longer needed words. Inside its core chamber, Admiral Saren Vale stood before a panoramic view of the stars. The room around her was alive with light, streams of information flowing like rivers. Voices of hundreds of fleets whispering through the walls. Commander Arlen Hayes entered quietly, his boots echoing against the steel floor. "It's done," he said. "The last Council fleet has surrendered. What's left of their leadership is begging for peace talks." Vale didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were locked on the holographic projection of the Milky Way before her. Red lights, enemy strongholds, were going dark one by one. "Begging," she repeated softly. "That's what we did once." And they laughed. Hayes stepped closer, his face grim. "The Council fears extinction now. They'll agree to anything. Should we respond?" Vale turned her gaze to him, her expression unreadable. "Do you remember when we still asked for justice? When we believed mercy could save the galaxy?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. And I remember what they did with that mercy." A long silence filled the room. The hum of the ship felt almost like a heartbeat. Finally, Vale spoke again, her tone quiet but heavy. "Then we show them what justice means." Across Terran space, the order rippled outward through encrypted channels. Fleets repositioned. Drones reactivated. Defense rings aligned. Every human ship, from the smallest scout to the largest dreadnought, began moving in unison, forming vast walls of light across the galactic core. They didn't fire. They didn't advance. They simply appeared, thousands of glowing shadows marking the edge of every empire that had ever raised a hand against humanity. It was not war. It was a statement. In the Council chamber, panic returned like a wave. "They've surrounded us," shouted a delegate. "They're everywhere." The speaker clutched his trembling hands. "Have they sent any message?" "Nothing," another voice answered. "Just silence." The word itself had become their greatest fear. The chamber lights flickered as static filled the comms. Then, all at once, every screen in the galaxy turned on. A figure appeared, human, tall and calm, standing against the backdrop of Earth. His face was older, lined with pain but steady with resolve. His voice was deep and quiet, yet it carried through every frequency. "This is not conquest. This is correction," he said. "You laughed when we begged for peace. You burned our colonies. You called it survival. Now you will rebuild what you destroyed. And you will remember who we are." Behind him, the image of Earth changed, its oceans glowing silver, its continents lit with veins of light. The planet was alive again, reborn under human hands. "For centuries," he continued, "we offered peace. You mistook it for weakness. You wanted to see what happens when humanity breaks." His eyes hardened, and his voice dropped to a whisper that echoed across the stars. "Now you have." The transmission ended, but its echo lingered. Entire fleets powered down their weapons. Armies surrendered without being asked. No one wanted to face what came next. In some systems, the people knelt under the night sky, praying to stars they once thought belonged to them. But Earth didn't strike again. Humanity had already proven its power. They didn't need more blood. Far beneath the surface of Earth, in a secret chamber beneath the mountains of what had once been Switzerland, Vale stood with Hayes before the Nemesis core. The room was dim, filled with faint pulses of blue energy. The core was a living intelligence, a fusion of human creation and alien technology taken from the ruins of war. It was more than a weapon. It was the collective memory of a species that had been forced to evolve through loss. Its voice filled the chamber, calm and endless. The Council has surrendered. Shall we dismantle them? No, Vale said softly. Not this time. The core's lights flickered as if in thought. Then what will become of them? They will live, Vale answered. But they will never forget. Hayes turned to her, frowning. You think they can change? She looked at him, her eyes tired but certain. They have to. Because if they don't, we'll become what they always feared we were. For the first time in months, Hayes smiled faintly. And what's that? Monsters, she said simply. The kind we once swore we'd never be. In orbit, the Terran fleets began to pull back. One by one, their engines dimmed as they retreated toward the solar system. They didn't leave destruction behind. Instead, they left monuments, massive satellites that projected a single image above every liberated world. A glowing white dove surrounded by stars. Beneath it, words appeared in 100 languages. Peace was our gift. You broke it. Now you will protect it. In the following weeks, the galaxy changed. The Council disbanded, replaced by the Concord, an alliance led not by humans, but by those who had survived because of them. Earth did not rule. It guided. The once scattered Terran colonies reopened their borders, rebuilding trade and life. Humanity didn't need vengeance anymore. Their silence had already rewritten the laws of power. But even peace carried its shadow. In the deep void beyond the Milky Way, near the dark edge where starlight no longer reached, strange signals began to pulse, faint, rhythmic, ancient. The Nemesis core detected them first. Something watches, it said. Not of this galaxy. Vale stood before the display, her eyes narrowing. Another empire. Older, the core replied. Perhaps the ones who made the first war you called history. For a long moment, she stared into the endless black beyond the known stars. Then humanity will be ready, she said quietly. Hayes stepped beside her. Do we strike first? She shook her head. No. We wait. We always wait. The stars outside shimmered faintly, reflecting against the hull of the TNS Eternity. Humanity's silence stretched across the void once more, not as fear this time, but as strength. The galaxy held its breath, remembering what happened the last time humans were tested. And as the ships drifted slowly toward the distant horizon, the words whispered through every world once more. They pushed humanity too far. Now even the stars themselves remember our wrath.